Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni,
bringing you this week's Ascended World. And look, we're in the same place today. Yay! So this week we're talking about this new, we got into talking about, I know I got something in my throat.
Oh.
Excuse me. I was just doing a marinade with chili peppers in it. I think I inhaled some before we came in. So. Good morning, Yasmin. See you popped in. So we were talking about success, right? So Sarah's here this week we're working on some programs together, like we did the 28 Days of Forgiveness.
Right.
We're so excited. We got all these new programs that are coming out to help everybody along and to help us along. And,
right.
And so in creating these is the idea of what's our goal, right? What's our goal?
Right.
What would we define as success, right? And the standard answer is what? Money. How much money do we make, right? And then there's the frou-frou side of, just how happy it makes everybody.
Right.
It serves the pub. And it's really what we're getting. It's really something completely different, and we see what so many different people are doing different. Like so many people have really jumped on the online course bandwagon.
Right.
Good morning, Sandra. And so, And so what we're getting is, so there's a whole new way, and it feels like it's gotten really loud again, right? Remember for what was loud in in-person classes, now it's loud in online.
Right.
And so when you're going, okay, and you get 500,000 coaches that are coaching coaches and telling you, what is it? Hey, Nicole. Hey, Karen. And when you have all this stuff,
well, it's like, what do you listen to?
Yeah.
It's like you're just being bombarded, and you get to the point where, you stop hearing.
Yeah.
Because it's just a dull roar all the time. So when you start looking at, how do you differentiate yourself, and how do you, and what we always say is, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do?
Right.
And so if you take that factor out, then you look at what you really want to do, what your passion is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started looking at, well, okay, so if we stop judging the success of what we do by money, what would we do?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's, you think you know the answer, but then when you really sit down and say, well, how would I operationalize that? How would I deploy that?
Right.
It gets a little sticky, and it gets more thoughts required.
Right.
And more, okay, well, if I just want to help people, then what do people need? What do they believe they need? And what would appeal to people? What would attract people? Because again, you don't want to be stuck to just the numbers, like, oh, well, we had this many students.
Right. And this many people did this, or, and yet at the same time, as many will say, we're still having to support ourselves
in the bills,
right? So it's sort of shifting this whole dynamic of, because part of what, working with people who are saying, oh, I want to follow my passion, or I want to do this, but I won't be able to how am I going to pay my bills? Right. And I'm just like, well, I pay my bills, and I've been making money doing this for 10 years now, and I'm pretty happy. And I don't sit there. And it's funny because I worked in corporate for 17 years in corporate marketing, and I was the one who did, these are like the ROI of this program and all this kind of stuff. And so I've had to untrain myself and I still have to. I still get into
let's look at the numbers.
Let's look at the numbers. And what I have found is Nicole just realized, she's like, well, y'all in the same room. Yeah. So, as I said, Nicole, in the beginning, I think it was before you got on, Sarah's here this week with me too. We're working on some new programs, and that's what brought up this whole conversation. And so, but the thing is, you have all these people out there who's like coaching coaches, and follow my formula and you're going to make $1 bajillion. And that should satisfy you. But then, and I've gone and just said, you know what? Yeah. I mean, I was a professional marketer before, so I understand the lingo, and I'm going to go and try these. Right. So try different things, or just looked at them and, And I'm going, but it feels like the heart comes out of it when it becomes a formula.
Right. Well,
Right.
and it looks good on paper, and it's all about, you know, in my opinion, focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah.
Not that there's a right or wrong, but
it's
a
focusing,
distraction.
right. It's focusing
what
on
it is.
things that help you, that cause you to be distracted from the bigger picture. Right.
Exactly.
So when we did the 28 days of forgiveness, right, that came in via guidance. It was like bang, 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 get it out there.
Done.
Right. And done. And so, yeah, we consider it successful, and we're going to keep it out there. And now it's actually opened the door to ideas for a whole bunch of other programs that are going to be similar, that are going to cover different aspects of our consciousness evolution, which is the whole ascended world purpose, right?
Right.
You know, is like living in a different way and seeing things differently. And so to me, that is like an epitome of success, because it's feeding on what we love to do and share. Right. And it is bringing us to another, the next step, right? And every step that we follow guidance brings us to the next step. Nicole says, yeah, the missing ingredients: heart, self-love, permission, forgiveness, and acceptance. Exactly.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. Good morning, Gloria. And so you have the, it's really this untraining of ourselves. It is.
And it's also, it's allowing and trusting, because we also talked about how we allow ourselves to go only so far.
Yes. And
then at that point, it's almost like we're untrained to go beyond that. And so all our perceived resources kind of evaporate at that point. We go, oh, okay, yeah, that's good enough. Mm-hmm. And I know we've talked about that. But this is one of those things where it's like, that's where the magic happens, is beyond that step right there. And that's the key to not only success in what we're working on, but success in anything.
Yes.
Is allowing that, trusting that, creating that flow, and remembering.
Yes. Yes. And so, we're looking at new, different ways of, like how to offer it in a way we might be guided, that might be more received in the way it needs to be received. Right.
Right.
And it's funny because, like I said, I've talked to so many people who are going, well, I've got to pay bills. And it's like, yeah, but guess what? When I follow my heart every single time, when I listen to my guidance, when I follow the pull, every single time it pays off.
Right.
And I'm talking about, yeah, guess what? The money comes in so that I pay the bills. Right. And it's really funny because people say, oh, well, you don't have to, and what do they say? They oh, well, you're married and you have to worry about it. It's like, but that doesn't mean that I don't have to bring money in, and it's like, but, and it's like, well, I choose to be, not just make the bills. I choose to be very comfortable financially. And I've done so much work over the years on to getting to that place, saying, you know what, I accept support from the multiverse in any way.
Right. And not just meeting my expectations, because I want something beyond my expectations, because why would I limit it?
Yes. So it's like, if I say we need to make this much money from this course, then we've just totally sort of cut ourselves off at the nose. Cause it's like, well, but you could make this much, and doing
so you
this,
don't want to make this much money.
So one of the examples is for example, let's talk about the Trinity practice, right? So getting it started in Dallas, which Dallas has just as many practitioners as the Raleigh area.
Right.
And that started because I was guided to go on a road trip out to New Mexico. This was back in 2011, it must have been 20. No, it was 2012. It must have been 2012. No, I think it was
because your first course was 2012.
2012, right?
In November.
I think it was 2011, right. And I think this was just coming in at the time, right? Because I was guided to do this road trip out to New Mexico to see this one day seminar by somebody. And it was really funny because I was like, okay, well, I resonate with this person, but I'm not particularly drawn to seeing them, right?
Right.
Let's just talk about, this is the whole stream of consciousness and trust, right? And I kept on getting guidance to go, and I was like, yeah. It was financially tight at the time. I was still sort of behind financially because of my herb nursery business that had gone south when the economy had gone south, and I was just making it up. in another business, and I was getting ready to go and do this. And I was like, the only place this person was speaking was in New Mexico for this one weekend. And I was trying to ignore it. And I literally had a friend call me up and say, okay, so do you know who this person is? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, well, I was in meditation and got to tell you that you need to connect with this person. And I was like, okay. So I was like, all right, so how could I do this? So how would I do this if I went? And I was like, oh, I guess I can just drive it. Right. So I drove it. I brought a pup tent. I stayed in KOA campgrounds and I stopped. And then I saw Sandy Anthony, right, who's a friend of mine from here. And she'd been a client of mine when I had my marketing business after the nursery. And we had become friendly. And so I was like, oh, let me stop by, you know, in Dallas. Like I'll take the southern route and I'll go through Dallas. And then I stayed at her house and we spent the whole night talking about spiritual stuff and whatever. And then she was really wanting to get involved more. And I'd worked with her on some stuff. And she wanted to hear more about this new thing that I was, you know, the Trinity that was coming in and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Well, that started the whole ball rolling. And so she helped me get the first class in place in Dallas.
Which was me.
Yeah, which Sarah
and I
was
don't
in.
even remember how I met Sandy. Yeah. It was probably a meetup or something.
And so the funny part was I was going out there to do the class. And at the time, I think there were only like 2 or 3 people signed up. And I'm going, oh, but it doesn't justify me going out to Dallas, blah, blah, blah. And I just got go. So I went out there. And then I had been invited to speak at Sandy had connected me with somebody who did a local spiritual meetup group. Right. Then she invited me to speak literally the night before class was supposed to start. And so I went out there and I spoke, and then I filled the class up that night just from speaking about Trinity. So that started the whole ball rolling. And some of the key people who ended up being, you know, primary in Trinity were in that group, that first class. Well, then I had another person in Dallas that wanted to take the class. And I was teaching it in Mount Shasta, California. And I only had, again, 2 people sign up for that class. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to California. And I only have 2 people sign up for this class. And guidance was just go and do it. And I'm like, okay. So then I went up there and I just taught the 2 of them. Of course, I really honestly don't ever argue anymore about going to Mount Shasta because it's one of my favorite places to go. But anyway, so I went up there and I just taught those 2 people, but then that person went back to Dallas and she filled up another class for me. Right. So that really started that whole community going. And so like, it did come back around, right? I did make the finances on it. Like it all worked out. And when I've trusted, when guidance has said, do this, even if it doesn't look financially viable right now, it comes back around, you know? So it's this whole, when we come from the heart and we and trust guidance, those are these 2 things. And we talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. Yet we talk about it. And then when the bills come due, we're like, oh yeah, I've just got to do something else.
Yeah. We allow that to distract us, derail us. Yeah.
So there's just a lot of stories with that. There's so many stories.
And right. And, you know, when this first forgiveness thing came in, we were like, oh, but that's just in 2 weeks. And oh, we can't. And it was like, but guidance was do it and do it now.
And we were already working on another course. So we're in the middle of working on that other course. Sarah gets the download for the course that we're on phone. And then we're like, oh, okay, we're supposed to do this one first. And we did.
Right. And we learned so much. And it just catapulted us to this next level. And we're allowing that flow.
Yes.
And it's that allowing ourselves to get beyond the just enough and only so far. And it's creating a whole new set of information of where we've been blocked. Mm-hmm. And I know physically I'm enjoying that today. But it really, it points out that when you start looking and allowing that, those places where you're not allowing it are like, oh no, mm-hmm. Something needs to change right here. Mm-hmm. So I can allow it in all areas. And that's really what we want to talk about today, mm-hmm. is getting to that, allowing it beyond just enough.
And to me, it's like, and so here's the thing. It doesn't happen typically overnight because we have to untrain ourselves
Right.
from so much. And I'm still like, we still go back and forth, and it's like, oh, well, does this financially make sense? Blah, 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 blah. You know, it was like putting the investments in to get all the programs in place to be able to hold that,
Right.
you know, and that's like, yeah, but then there's a whole bunch right behind it. There's more to do.
Right.
And guess what? It's not even going to be that way. You have all these things that you can play in.
Right.
And when you start playing them, because we love doing this, we have such a great time. And it's like, well, then you just don't even have to think about it, because the money will all come together.
I'll figure out. Right.
Yeah. Because we were talking, and how it started was, we're talking, I said, okay, so here's the thing that, you know, I've said to clients before is, so if you won the lottery,
right,
and had like $50 million in the bank, so what would you be doing with your life? Right. So, and of course, after you take the year and go traveling, because we all want to do that, you know, after we get our couple of different pieces of property, and like, for me, it's like the mountains, one in the mountains, one in the ocean. Yeah.
Right.
And to me, I'd be like, oh, those are retreat centers more than just, you know, properties. But it's like, okay, so after that, you know, what would you do? Right. And it's like, would you still do this? And I'm like, I would still do this because I love it and I live it and breathe it.
But the focus wouldn't be how many students, what do we charge? It would be, I do this because it brings me joy. And that is my success, is allowing that joy, because that joy then is the one that overflows.
Yep.
And that's really success.
Right.
Is getting to that point where you fill yourself up so much that it overflows.
Exactly. And that's how it all starts to connect these dots, right?
Absolutely.
You know, we were talking about doing a whole class just on abundance and prosperity having to do with this and connecting these dots, because I know, but there's 1,000 of those out there.
Right.
But the whole thing is, you know, it ends up coming from here and holding us at a different vibration of letting go of expectation, right?
Yeah.
Letting go of, oh, well, to do this, I have to have this many students and this much, you know, this much tuition and da 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 da. And literally it was, what do we charge? It's like, what do we put up? How do we do it? What do we charge? Don't ask questions. And we just did it. It was fabulous.
It was. It was. And it flowed so effortlessly. And by the time we were done, I was so sad it was over.
Yeah.
I was so sad it was over.
So that's why we're like, we have more courses to do. And because we participate in it just as much as we teach it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so especially when in energy work in any way, you know, it was like, I did, letting go of expectations can be fun. Nicole says that's exactly right. And so, you know, and then right in the middle of that, I also was guided to do a Trinity practitioner refresher course. Right. And so we had a group of people taking the refresher, and it was a great reminder to me, right, because I haven't taught the class because of so much has shifted in the past year and a half. I haven't taught it for like a year and a half, either portion of it. And to go back and to do it that way, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm home again. I forgot how much I love teaching that class. Like, if I had one person there, if I had, you know, like, it didn't even matter. I was like so happy to teach that class. And yeah, I had it turned out to be a nice group, but it was like, but that's, to me, that becomes success. Cause then it's like, okay, well, then I go to bed at night and there's just nothing but joy in my heart. And it's like, all right, more tomorrow.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah. And then we find things work out. And it's
well, and you get at that vibration where then you start attracting different things, where if you're focused on the formula or the numbers or that version of success, that's all you're going to attract. You're not going to get that other facet of attracting things through your vibration of the joy.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I have mentioned Anne McKenzie before, who she's another Trinity practitioner, but in fact, I did one of my Living the Shifts, I think, with her a while back on talking about living abundance, because she is one of the people who I know who is the best epitome of, I live the way I love, you know, and she said to me, now she's built up a pretty nice business now she's a wedding officiant and stuff. And she does meditation and things, energy work too. But before she even built that up, you know, she was like, I live on a really, like, if you look at it on paper, my income is really not livable. But yet she had her own home.
Right.
She had her own, her own, and she was always, the woman would win like every raffle I ever saw her join, right? She would get, I told her she should be doing workshops on abundance,
Right,
living
right.
in prosperity. And like, she would get free trips. Like friends of hers would be like, hey, I have this timeshare and, by the Grand Canyon, do you want to go? Like, I'm not using it. Oh, okay. And then she'd just have to pay airfare. And then like half the time she'd have somebody else pay airfare. It's just like crazy how she's just gotten so many things. And it's like, on paper, you would never know she had that kind of success.
Right.
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 But she lives such a life of abundance. And it's such an inspiration to even know her because she holds that vibration all the time. And she's just like, well, and now, okay, well, my income's this, which is much different than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And she's living the same life because it just caught up to her.
Right. Right. Well, and we're going through so much as a collective. And if you ask the question, what would happen if money went away? Which, things are, that's entirely possible with the way things are these days.
Yep.
What would that look like for you? What would that look like in your life? How would that impact you and reflect and would you go to that place of fear of what do I do now? And I mean, that's when what we're talking about is so important because, money is just, it's like time. It's a man-made construct that we have put so much importance on and we have forgotten.
Yeah. And I recently did that 21-day change one thing with Mike Dooley, who does Tut's Notes of the Universe. And if you don't do that, it's great. It's a free sign up you could do. It's an email that's just like a note from the universe every day. And it's almost always spot on.
Really is.
What's going on. But anyway, I did a 21-day thing with him because, again, I like to check out what other people are doing and whatever. And it's true. Like, so the whole thing was change one thing adventure. It started in January. Everybody's got their year resolutions, right?
Right.
So he said, pick one thing and we're going to create it. We're going to manifest it. And we're going to go through every day, doing focusing 15 minutes, which really was great, which is what made me fall in love with that idea. And then when we started doing the 28 days, I was like, oh, well, we can do that.
Right.
In our flavor of ice cream, because 15 to 20 minutes is unobtrusive to most people. Right. It's doable and all that kind of stuff. Anyway.
Not overwhelming.
Anyway, it was great because as we were going in, somebody asked, I don't know, probably about a couple of days in, said, so, but what if I just wanted to be happy? And he goes, well, ultimately, that's really the goal.
You're just building to that.
That's right. He's like, so, you might set to make this kind of income or be extremely abundant or to have the best-selling book, write the best-selling book or write and publish the best-selling book or travel the world. And he goes, but at the end of the day, it's what is it? How do I live my joy? Right. Like, or I'm ready to live my joy. And so when we're ready to live our joy and he even said this, like exactly the same way we talk about it, it's like when we live with joy as our priority, then we don't have to say, I have to make this much money.
Right.
I have to have this kind of business. I have to have the books look like this. I have to have blah, 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 because it is implied by saying I live in my joy that the whole universe will just support you.
Right.
In all those ways.
All the pieces fall into place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's that trust.
Yes.
That's the trust. And that is such that we are not taught to trust.
Mm-hmm.
We really aren't taught to trust.
Yeah. And we've talked about in the past, endpoint creation, we called it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and that's actually, it's very similar to a lot of other things other people are doing now, which is funny because we're all sort of getting the same message now, which is great.
Right.
But it's looking at the end results, like looking at the goal,
that focus,
and trusting that the universe is going to let it come together. So what happens is we judge every step of the way, right? Oh, this isn't looking like this.
Right.
This doesn't look like this.
Or the odds are this isn't going to happen.
Right. And, what's interesting is, so like I go back to Anne, and so you're on today. It's funny that she's usually on too. Right. She's often on, so it's funny. But like she's she didn't know what her passion was. Like, she likes doing a lot of different things. She likes to travel. She loves share. Like, at the end of the day, she loves sharing joy with people. She loves opening her heart with people. So that can fit into so many different packages, right? So she started, what did she call it? Whole life, some kind of whole life, something coaching. I can't remember the terminology she used. For people in transitionary periods and blah, blah, blah. Well, then she started doing weddings, right? And she was like, oh, and she fell in love with doing weddings. Why? Because she loves sharing joy with people. And what great place to be.
Right. It naturally fit.
Exactly. So it was funny because we were talking about that one day, and I said, you realize that that's how you fit. She goes, well, I would have never guessed in a million years that I'd end up being a wedding officiant. Like, that was never on my docket.
That wasn't in my plans.
It wasn't in my plans. If somebody asked me, the top 20 things that I wanted to be, it wouldn't have been any of them. And she's like, and yet I love it because I'm there with people when they're some of their most joyful moments.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love a wedding?
Right. And so then she likes to help people like find their joy in the wedding because, often they lose it because of the plans and everything else. But, she does these beautiful, poetic, love stories for the ceremonies. Like, she really puts her heart into it, and she just loves it. So it's like so easy for her.
Right.
And she has more business than she handles. She's passing off business now because
she's full.
Yeah. And she sometimes does 3 weddings on a Saturday. Like, it's crazy, So, that's the whole thing, is find where you express your joy the most.
Right.
Right. I mean, how simple is that? I love sharing joy with people.
Yeah.
That gives you so many options. Shh. I'm going to let myself do that. That's what, don't say like, it's almost like changing the way we say it to the universe.
Right.
Like, don't say, bring it to me. Say, I'm allowing myself to do this because it's already there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because where your energy is being spent now is preventing yourself from doing that anyway.
Right. And so, why I like doing this is I love tapping into our magic. I love tapping into that infinite, like, instantaneous, like what people consider miraculous things, that we have that incredible power to do. And I love helping people do that for themselves, because then we play on the playground together. Right. So it's like finding success is a different matter altogether, because I see many who are out there and then they struggle with the formula.
Right.
Oh, I've got to do this, and then I've got to do this, and I've got to do this funnel, and I've got to do, these levels, and I've got to have 3 levels of classes, and I've got to have like the low price, the medium price, and the high price. And well, I mean, that's the standard formula that goes across the board.
And you can go out there and you can go, oh, there's one. Oh, and get the free download. Everything has to have the free download.
Exactly. Yep. And the key is, and it's not that that's bad, but are you guided to do that?
Right.
And okay, so the other point is, be very aware of what guidance is versus what ego is telling you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of times you say, no, I just don't like doing that, is because you're uncomfortable doing that, right? Like, I don't like getting on.
Which means you should really do that.
That's right.
And you should do it often.
Yeah. And, like, sometimes, people get guidance, get out there, start like doing videos, do this or whatever. It's so easy today.
It really is. And it doesn't matter if anybody's watching, because it's there.
Yeah.
And what was the movie? Field of Dreams, build it and they'll come.
Yeah. And you said it, the vibration that is going to, here's the thing. Talk a lot about setting vibration at a certain level, right? So you set this vibration of, okay, well, this is going to attract those who are ready to be ready, willing, and able to engage with this at this vibration and understand at the same level. And we put out there. Sometimes it takes a little time.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't.
And that's where the trust comes in.
Yeah. Right. And so, and then eventually you get, oh, well, do this and then do this. I mean, we're even doing a book from the 28 days because, we found a great transcription service. Thank you, Laurel. I don't know if she's still here, but it's, and so, like, because now we can offer things in so many ways to different people who might receive it in a different format. And it's becoming less and less time consuming to do it. Like,
well, and that's the flow.
yes.
Once you get into that, once you allow that opening up, you just get in the flow, and it's like you just grab things as you're going by, and it's perfect. It's just perfect. And you 9 times out of 10, you couldn't have imagined it.
Exactly.
You could not have sat there and said, okay, I want this to happen, then this to happen, then this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's that letting go and trusting and knowing that it's going to happen.
Oh yeah, Laura said yes, love otter. It is awesome. So, and that was funny because it was like that was the missing piece.
Right.
That was like, and Laurel randomly
right.
texts me and says, hey, I found this great transcription thing. You want to try it out? And I was like, all right. And I think it even took me a couple of weeks to get to it because we were getting that together. And then I was like, oh, and then one morning I woke up and I was like, yeah, well, if you transcribe the recordings, you can just make a book out of it. And I was like, oh my God, that's so easy. I played with that. Like, yeah. So it's just like, and that's the listening part, right? Instead of, oh, I don't want to go through all that. No, I'm working on another book. Like there's all these things that you will say, oh no, I've got to do this. But if you literally get that little voice, it's going, yeah, look into that.
Right.
That's when you get a trust that it comes around, And so success becomes, if you employ things like, I like sharing joy with people, I like sharing divine remembrance with people, right? You can do that in millions of ways. And unfortunately, how we've been trained is choose one thing.
Right.
Just do it this way. Do this kind of business. Do it with, by yourself, or do it with this person, and that's all you can do. And there's no other option. And
well, and I know that my father used to always tell me, it's like, well, that's what you can do on the weekends. You need to find something that will support you, that will pay your bills, that will do, and it was like everything else was relegated to the weekend, that you need to find something to support your hobbies.
And that generation, that's what they taught our generation.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes. And so that's a big shift to say, because we believe then we can't make money from something we love to do or be. Right.
And I always told my kids, I said, it doesn't matter what you choose to do, as long as it is, you find your joy and passion in it, you will be successful. Mm-hmm. You can't help but be successful.
Exactly. Well, and then it doesn't matter because your life will reflect that joy, and it will fit you perfectly no matter what that looks like, or if it's different from everybody else. Right. Like if you go back to the example with Anne about the, like the income on paper didn't match up to the life she was living. And then it caught up, it sort of catches up as she goes along. I was like, oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Well, look, you're getting all this stuff. You don't have to worry about all that. And okay, we'll bring that along now too, as she cleared out anything she had that prevented her from like having that as well. So it's just, it's living with that endpoint thing, that endpoint for like, find what it is that really, really brings you joy. Like,
and then opening up that your definition of what success is.
Right. Well, and also opening up the options to say, I don't have to express this way.
Right.
It can be expressed in 5 different ways. Well, Sarah is one of the most creative people I know and makes anything you need her to make. And so when you do, but like, so you could do that in so many different ways. Like you've refinished furniture, right? And you do this work, and then, you do so many different arts and crafts things,
right?
And you don't have to make money at it. You can't, like, and there's all the ways that can be employed down the road,
right?
If you let it. I mean, look at now the market for that refinished furniture that's exploded.
It really is. It really is.
And I've met multiple people who do that now. They take in old pieces and they refinish them. Like the piece I have over here, I got from somebody who took an old piece in.
Right. My problem is I'll do that and then I won't turn it loose.
Yeah, no, her house is full of those pieces that are beautiful.
Right. Right.
But, there's like so many ways that start. And how did that happen? Oh, the advent of marketplace and Craigslist and all that kind of stuff, right? So we're creating the support system out of content. Like we're starting to go down the path of where we're guided. And then the support system gets created along the way.
Right. Which what is it? Leap and the wings will come, or step and the step will appear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the trust. That's the trust.
So, and yeah, so it might not bring you money today, right? But the thing is, it's like, if you find your guidance, the guidance will lead you down the path
Right.
of, oh, well, I don't know, I was guided to take this job. That's sort of weird because it doesn't really feel like it aligns with this. But then in this job, you might meet this person who then connects you with this other whatever that gets you into this, where in an area that fits that more. And so, yeah, it's really as we always say, it comes back to listening to guidance over everything else, and not butting it, not doing the butts.
Butting it, I like that.
But yeah, not butting it. I can't. Or that person we knew that used to say, does this butt make my ego look big, or something like that? Yeah.
Right.
Does this ego make my butt look big? Something like that.
Yeah. Something like that. Right.
But yeah, it's the buts that prevent us from doing that. Oh, but blah blah blah. And when Anne started doing her efficient stuff, it was like, okay, well, I'll just try it. And then it was like, oh, this was fun. I really enjoyed that. I'm gonna do some more. And then how do I start doing this? And how do I get more, involved in the market? And I'll tell you what. And when you when you just say, okay, well, I'm guided to do this. And sometimes it'll get thrown at you. I think I think her first wedding was sort of a random thing. Right. And so, when it gets thrown at you and you're like, okay, well, I'll try it. Every once in a while, I'll have some weird off the cuff thing that comes to me through what I do that I would not have typically, thought of that I'd be doing. And yet it always works out. It always feels good in the end if I follow it. And so when we start to redefine success, to go back to our original, it's really all about, okay, so what is success? I mean, success is truly allowing your heart to lead the way and feeling awesome about everything you do.
Right.
If we all loved what we did every day, nobody would bitch about Mondays. Nobody would say, oh, TGIF, because they'd be like, it's just another day.
Exactly.
Of awesomeness every day.
Right.
And yeah, and today I do this and tomorrow I do that, and the bills get paid and I live abundantly, and I'm, and I don't have to worry about that because I trust.
Right. And I don't have to hoard my joy. I can share my joy. What a difference that would make in the world.
Yeah. Just think about that. Everybody would be happy. You wouldn't have the cranky people at the DMV. You wouldn't have or a variety of places. But it would be a completely different world, because a lot of times people are cranky because other people are cranky with them.
Right.
But if nobody's ever cranky with you, well, then you can't help but stop being cranky eventually.
Right. It's all that vibration.
The vibration shifts. Right. And so we start doing that. That's the whole domino effect.
And that's being the change you want to see in the world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Simple as that.
Right.
Covered it. Yep. I mean, just think about this. Sarah and I have been doing this now for how many years? Like a lot of years now.
4? Has it been that long?
4, maybe even 5.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think
easily could be.
I think it's been 2 years since we started publishing the podcast.
And then we shared just with the Trinity for a while.
And then we went public.
And before that, we were just doing it because that's what we love to do.
Yeah. And we would every Monday morning, we would have a weekly share. And then we realized at some point, oh, this is very collective because you have the same thing. I have the same thing.
So somebody else has to be having the same
thing. A whole bunch of clients have the same thing.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. Everybody I talk to. And so then I would talk about it. And then some of the Trinity practitioners would say to me, oh, why don't you post that? Because that would be such a great conversation. So then we recorded it and posted it for a while on the Trinity page.
Right.
And then it was like, and then we got the whole, we'll do it as a podcast. So we started doing that. We have no financial investment in this, except that we love doing it. And we get thousands of people now that watch this every week, which is awesome. So, and now we're building courses, and now we're building other things that are coming out of this. And it's so joyful. It's so fun.
It's joyful.
It really is. It's like, and so people say, and it's so funny. It's like, oh, well, must be nice to have fun with your work. And I'm like, it is.
It is. You ought to try it sometime.
Right. Because you're allowed,
Right.
And so, the next step is, having so much money in the bank, I never have to think about it ever again. But then I already don't really think about it because it is crazy how money comes to me now, like randomly all the time.
Right.
So it's like, oh, if I'm like feeling this pull to do this, and I'm thinking, oh, like the mind starts going, oh, well,
But
and then it's like, no, just do this. And then it's like, oh, but then all this comes and it's like some surprise check shows up.
Right.
Somebody sends me some donation, or it's like a total random. It's great. And that's what we can do. That's how we create, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the real fun, exciting part of this.
Right.
That's the fun, exciting part about tapping into that magical, divine, infinite power that we have.
Right. Well, and this is almost like just the first step, because if you can get to that vibration with the joy, it just overflows into everything, every facet of your life. And then all the people that you're with, it starts shifting their vibration, and it's like a virus.
It's like a virus in the best way possible.
Right. Right.
So let's make the love virus.
Right.
The joy virus.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we set today, is that remembering how to change our definition, or let's not even remembering how to, let's just change our definition of success to allow for it to be based in the heart and joy and passion and trust in our infinite possibility of creation. That felt good.
Yeah, that feels great.
And that's great with us getting ready to do these courses too.
That's right.
All right. So everybody close your eyes, take a deep breath, open your heart, hold ourselves at that vibration, willing to accept that. Excuse the interruption.
A little resistance there.
Oh, a little resistance there. That's all right. I was so well, actually, I was way out there too, and whoever was knocking on the door was loud.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to this.
Right.
Listen. It was great because I saw that it was almost like, you know what it made me think of? E.T. Remember E.T., the heart light thing?
Right.
So like once I started seeing the heart lights turn on, and then the more we did start to do things together from that heart light, oh my God, it was just like this new network, right? They call it not the neural network, but the heart network. And it's not like we haven't talked about that before, but it was like as we all start to do things from the center of our heart, and we do things from that joy, and we then connect together and do like we're doing these together and whatever, it amplifies it like a bajillion times. Like, not that it has to, but it just starts to amplify. It makes it easier. It makes this snowball rolling thing. And I was like, oh, it feels so good. And then somebody knocked on the door downstairs. And then my husband knocked on the door, and I'm like, no, we do our podcast. So.
Well, I kept seeing as we turn up that heart light that it was like the heat when you're making popcorn, and it was like the ideas and the universe, everything just started popping and filling, and it was just like almost like, the popcorn is the abundance, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was just like, and it was so natural and easy and
just awesome, yummy.
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 Right.
So I guess we just have to go and implore as to what the resistance was, that the knocking was
right.
Twice knocked on the front door, and then weirdly knocked on my office door. So
it's all perfect.
It's all perfect. It is. I almost started laughing, and I was like,
right.
I guess I have to come back now. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was like,
you're
don't
done.
let yourself go so far. Come on back. There are other things to do. So stay with that this week. Like, ask yourself, like, what is it? And it doesn't have to be a thing. It doesn't have to be like doing one thing, right? It's not the doing, it's the being. What is it for you to be that allows you to express your joy? And then ask yourself, if I shifted my whole focus in life to living from that in every way.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What would that look like? And then let the universe, let your expanded self show you. Oh, that feels so yummy.
That really does.
I'm so excited.
That's the infinite possibilities.
Yes, totally. All right. Well, in that yumminess, we'll let you go.
Right.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week. This is Angela Coulter.
And we'll be back on Monday.
Yes, we'll be back on Monday next week.
Monday.
Yes.
2 screens.
Yeah. Right. This is Angela Coulter.
Sarah C. Gavignoni.
Signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.